It's always fun when an episode that's been lost in the mists of time gets some sort of release, and I know some fans haven't been that complimentary on the new animated editions of Doctor Who, but I've always enjoyed them. For many of us, it'll be the only way that we can bring to life the missing episodes of the series. The latest of these is the 3D animated version of the Celestial Toymaker. And when this first came to the public eye, there were a lot of comments about how bad the animation looked, but I've always said that I will wait and see and give it a fair benefit of the doubt. Well, I'm just about to sit down and watch it, and I'll be back with what I think about this, the Blu-ray release, and everything else surrounding it as we go beyond the sofa. Okay, right. I was slightly annoyed when this disc didn't arrive on Sunday, as I was told it would, and it was scheduled then for Monday when I couldn't sit down and watch it. And as it turned out, it arrived just as I was sitting down to eat lunch. So I decided, probably against my better judgment, to just watch the whole thing through. Now, like I've said on this channel before, I'm not a fan of Steelbook edition Blu-rays, so mine is the standard edition box. But the only thing that you're really missing out on is the case itself. All of the features are exactly the same, and as per usual, this comes in a cardboard slipcase for you to inadvertently destroy when you try and shove it in to your already overburdened DVD collection. I'm going to start off by talking about the special features on the disc. Obviously, you don't buy this sort of thing for the special features alone, but it's nice to have something on there that's a little bit special. There's not much, to be honest. Photographic reconstruction of the missing episodes, audio commentaries, and a making-of featurette are the bulk of the offering. And we also have an audio interview with Carmen Silvera, which is definitely worth a listen, but I'm sure I've heard it somewhere before. Oh, and the introduction by Sylvester McCoy that was on the Hartnell Years VHS tape. I'm not sure whether you class this as a special feature or not, but there is a restored version of episode 4, and you can choose to watch the black and white animation with that as a final episode as well, as it was originally broadcast. But then we have something that is a little bit special. It's called Escape Room Team First Doctor, which is a little bit of a misnomer because whilst it's got Peter Purves and Maureen O'Brien in as two of the contestants, it's also got Lisa Bowerman as the third. Now, as a big Finnish fan, I'm pleased that Lisa's getting a little bit of attention, but it does feel a bit odd when it's meant to be the first Doctor team. Beyond that, however, the introduction to this section is really interesting. It's billed as something that's been created for the collection sets, and it looks like different episodes have been filmed with teams from each era of the series. On this disc, we only get the first Doctor team, which is fine, because it's clearly a taster of things to come. It was always going to be difficult creating special features for something like this with mostly missing material and people who were involved in it just no longer being alive. The escape room itself is actually around 70, 80 minutes long, and it's kind of what you would expect from a Doctor Who escape room. And at times, it's infuriating watching the team try and figure something out that you've already figured out yourself. However, ultimately, it's a lot of fun, and you're rooting for them to get to the end with the help of K9. Given all that, they've actually done a really good job here, and the special features do support the final production. Much like other collection special features, this escape room series looks like it's going to be a fan favourite. For me, it was actually the highlight of the disc, mostly because I wasn't quite expecting what we actually got. I look forward to seeing more of these as they get released, hopefully in the collection, assuming that's the idea. So now, let's move on to the Celestial Toymaker itself. And I've been rather dreading this because everything I've seen of it so far makes me not like this style of animation. And having said that, I know that most of the people who were at the BFI screening said that they liked it. It did make me think that there must be something that I was missing, and I've always said that I wanted to wait and see the full thing to make a real judgment. There was no doubt in my mind that I was going to buy this because I have bought all of the animations so far, and it's the only way, short of the sort of narrated audio or the target books that have been made available in the past, of experiencing this episode and this story. I do think having visuals against the soundtracks is a lot better than just having that audio descriptive narration. So as the titles came onto the screen, there was a little bit of trepidation. You know, I don't like this style of art at all. It reminds me far too much of those late 90s 3D shows that they used to try and palm off on kids. You know, the ones that don't look much better than a PlayStation game. But what I found when watching it was actually the art style didn't hold me back from enjoying the episodes. And surely that's more important in the long run. There are some parts of the animation that still look a little bit clunky. It's far less of a problem than you think when you first see the trailer, though. Moments where the animation is a little bit too smooth, or it looks a little bit too much like a knockoff from that sort of kids film you'll buy down the market. They do happen, but they're very few and far between. And what you're actually left with are 4 episodes of Doctor Who that feel cohesive, and they do draw you into the story. The Celestial Toymaker was never my favourite story to begin with. I always thought that it was a little bit boring, but a good chunk of that was because I was experiencing the show without any visuals. There's an idea floating around that Doctor Who in the 60s didn't really have any visually important episodes, but I'd suggest that that's not true. After all, what would Tomb of the Cybermen be without the Cybermen breaking out of their tombs? What would Invasion of Earth be, Daleks' Invasion of Earth be, without seeing the Daleks in London? And take a look at The Mind Robber. You know, that's a story that has its roots very much in the same concepts and ideas that Celestial Toymaker does. And I'm not sure that I'd want to experience that without the visuals of the Mind Robber's world. It just wouldn't be the same. What the team here have managed to create is an animation that after a fairly short time lets you be carried away by the story. There's still a few moments where the soundtrack isn't doing anything and the visuals aren't doing much either. But even that seems much less in this than it is in other animated reconstructions. It's interesting that they've used mocap to do this with, and it should be noticed that the fast pace of 3D at the moment, especially when it comes to Unreal Engine, means that whatever the team set out with was probably out of date fairly soon after they started animating. That said, the motion capture works fairly well most of the time. Indeed, the whole thing is a big step up from the Web of Fear animation that the same team worked on. And of course, one of the other things that they've been able to do is make the episode more dynamic. They've expanded the world which the story is being told in, added fancy special effects where needed, and created more dramatic lighting and camera movement, which does add to the storytelling experience. All in all, then, I was pleasantly surprised. I was expecting this, well, not to be quite as good as some of the other productions that we've seen recently. I've got a great love for the animated reconstructions, mostly because they're the only way to visually experience the episodes now. And having these things come out feels almost like having new Doctor Who from old favourites. I can only really liken it to the first time that I listened to a Big Finish story. And despite my initial reaction to the art style, it ended up working rather well. I'm not sure whether it would have worked on any other story, but there's something about the world of the Toymaker that really fits the almost childish look of the characters. It's worth noting, whilst many of the characters look quite like the original counterparts, the Doctor and Stephen in particular look nothing like themselves. And you know, that's a little bit disappointing. When you consider that Dodo and the Toymaker are actually fairly accurate, albeit characters of the original actors. In the making of documentary, they said that they didn't want to go down the ultra-realistic path. I can see why. I think that would have increased the budget, possibly exponentially, and I don't think that anybody would have been happy with the final results. At least this way, with a stylized-looking feel, you can start to buy into the characters as the story progresses. They've got some interesting stylistic choices that I like as well the moment that they meet the playing card king and queen. You see those characters seem to be running at fewer frames per second than the rest of the animation. And it gives them very jarring movements. Clearly, this was something that was meant to happen. I don't want to suggest that they got anything wrong. That movement adds to their characterizations and it makes those scenes more visually interesting, which is, usually a sort of goal when you're directing something like this. And by the end of the story, I found myself wanting more. I think it's done a really good job of reconstructing missing episodes that were never likely to show up again. All credit should go to the production team for having the balls to do something out of the realms of the traditional 2D animations that we've had with these reconstructions in the past. The fact that the stylistic choices didn't actually impact my enjoyment of the story goes to show how well everything else is put together and how competently this production has been managed. Is 3D the future of animated Doctor Who reconstructions? I don't know. I expect we're likely to see more 2D animations again, and whilst 3D really worked for the Celestial Toymakers universe, I'm not sure it would have been quite as good if you saw it in a story like The Mythmakers. But after this one, I'd be a lot more excited if I heard that the team behind this were getting another crack at the whip, and that we would be getting another animation, at least something like this. That's what I think. Anyway, I'd love to know what you think in the comments below, and I just want to thank you ever so much for making it through to this part of the video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you can, do join me on the next video when we go Beyond the Sofa.